Imagining all of you in your underwear was a bad idea. It certainly didn't help me at all. Okay. The end of my first act in life was a shocking scene. The day was Thursday, May 12th, 2005, forever etched in my mind. Stage 2B, invasive ductal carcinoma, estrogen receptive and BRCA2 positive. For those of you that don't speak cancer, it was breast cancer. The result of a genetically mutated gene. I was 28 years old, a single mom to a son who had just turned 5, self-employed, and all of my relatives were out of state. I was terrified and overwhelmed. Even in those first moments, I knew with total confidence that God was at work. My resources were no doubt limited, but I was about to learn that in ways that really, truly matter, I was by far the wealthiest woman I knew. Literally from the day of my diagnosis, my community of friends, my church family, my work family, and anyone I had ever known rallied together. It is not an exaggeration. My son and I had hundreds of people come to our aid. I never went to an appointment alone. My son never went uncared for, and I was not burdened to care for him on my sickest days. I didn't clean my home for almost 9 months because every week someone showed up to do it. I did not fix a meal for at least 9 months. I received more cards and gifts than I could ever possibly recount. Financially, I had, no lie, hundreds of people give to us. Just imagine being on the receiving end of that kind of love. The Lord used an army of his people to carry us every minute of every day for months. You see, early on in my experience, I had a conversation with God that went something like this. Okay, so apparently you think that I can handle this. So I'm going to give it everything that I have. You promise me that I will never be alone because you're with me every step of the way. So this is truly rubber meets the pavement moment of fleshing out what I say I believe with what I truly believe. I'm going to do my part. I really wish more than anything that I didn't have to do this and I could wake up from this nightmare, but it appears that I cannot. So let's do this. In my commitment to give myself completely to what I was experiencing, one of the things that was at the forefront of my mind was getting outside of myself and paying attention to those around me. I had the realization that most of the people I encountered that were also battling cancer did not have a fraction of the support network that I had, and it stunned me. I set out to change that. My first step was to go to the army of people serving my son and I. This was before social media and the many networking tools we utilize today. But I worked diligently to unite hundreds of volunteers. I figured if people were willing to cook meals for me, clean my home, drive me to appointments, care for my son, and give to me financially, they were sure to want to help others in similar situations as me. Once my volunteers were in place, I made it my mission to seek out cancer patients in desperate circumstances. I met with nurses and doctors, and then I branched out to other cancer centers. Who better to identify needs than the men and women that sacrificially serve cancer patients every day? Following my initial diagnosis, I was given financial gifts that totaled in the neighborhood of $20,000. I had a conversation with God, again, and told him that I wanted to set that money aside to fund an organization and help those with cancer that were in need of financial assistance. But I was in need myself. So I started to think outside the box. I researched pharmaceutical grants to pay for and cut the cost of my very expensive medications. I applied for every medical grant that I was eligible for. My church paid for some of my medical bills. Some were written off by my doctors, and others were paid by complete strangers. By the grace of God, I was able to cover all of my medical expenses. Before I knew it, the organization that started in my dining room had become a thriving nonprofit, raising as much as $150,000 in 1 year and serving countless cancer patients. We provided rides for people that had no transportation. We provided meals for families that needed to feel loved and supported. I will never forget, one of our recipients was in his last days and all he wanted to eat was banana pie. So one of our volunteers made him banana pies. We were blessed to be able to meet needs in people's lives. We took each need on an individual basis, assessed what needed to be done, and then brought together the people and resources that we needed to meet those needs. I believe my organization was successful because the need was great and cancer touches so many people. It was cathartic to me as I continued going through my own struggles with cancer to pour my energy into cancer patients in far worse situations than I. I didn't have time to feel sorry for myself. And there was another unexpected benefit. Many of the cancer patients that my organization served became extended family. And I will always cherish the years that I poured myself into as many people as God would allow me to do so. My work serving others in the cancer community was a healing time and a beautiful end to Act 1 in my story. I couldn't control the outcome of my cancer diagnosis, but I could control how I responded to it, and so I did. Act 2. There is another part to my story. Against all that I am capable of understanding, about a year into my cancer journey on New Year's Eve of 2006, I met a young gentleman who asked me on a date. I couldn't imagine why he would be interested in me. I was a hot mess, like a hot mess. Can you just picture the dating ad? I mean, seriously. 30-year-old, single white female, single mom, likes margaritas, Mexican food, and long walks in the cancer center. I mean, who wouldn't want to date me, right? My hair was still really short and just growing back in, and I really didn't feel like myself. But he seemed kind and genuine, and so I went. I knew he was a jewel because when he called me to ask me on our first date, he asked me what the rates were for babysitters so that he could bring enough money for the babysitter. Trust me, there are very few guys that would think of that. It's not easy dating when there are so many unknown variables in a person's life. Still, there was something there for both of us. I remember vividly talking to him about possibly not being able to have any more children. As if I hadn't given him enough reasons to change his mind, surely this would be the final blow. But it wasn't. It was something we processed and moved through. 7 years to the exact date of my last chemotherapy appointment, we said I do. We didn't plan that, we didn't plan the date, but once I realized it, I couldn't help but consider it a wink from God. And then, on May 12th, 2014, exactly 9 years from the day of my cancer diagnosis, my husband and I went to a doctor's appointment and learned that we were pregnant with not one, but 2 babies. You heard that right, 2 babies. December 8th, 2014, we welcomed Maverick Renner and Julia Knox into our family. You cannot make this stuff up. My second act is beyond my wildest dreams. I'm a stay-at-home mom to my 3 boys. I have 1 learning to drive and 2 learning to crawl. I'm married to my best friend and the love of my life, who to this day is still paying for the babysitter. People often ask me, what is the biggest lesson that you've learned from your cancer experience? And my answer is always the same. The only thing we can control in life, in any situation really, is our response to it. Life does not owe us anything. And may we always have the strength to remember that God can use everything we come through to help others. Thank you.